Fellow Sierra Leoneans, this is lawyer Abubakar Kalokoh, senior member of the All People's Congress Party and leader of the indomitable Kalokoh movement, responding to President Bio's address this morning before the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Let me first of all thank the President for taking the time to participate in a historic event which fosters dialogue on the world's march toward progress and development. This year's theme at the UN General Assembly is, and I quote, galvanizing multilateral efforts for poverty eradication, quality education, climate action, and inclusion, end quote. Fellow Sierra Leoneans, our President started his remarks by calling on the United Nations to expedite and fast-track Africa's inclusion in the United Nations Security Council. I support the President's call to make the UN Security Council more broadly representative. Additionally, his message that Africa demands 2 permanent seats with all the rights and prerogatives of current members, including the right of veto, and 2 additional non-permanent seats, and the right to have an equal say in decision-making regarding issues pertaining to international peace and security is apt and in place. Why should Africa have a say in global security arrangements, one may ask? Because the African continent has in more recent times become the bedrock of incessant conflicts, a safe haven for international terrorism, and the continent is becoming an economic powerhouse that cannot be continuously ignored. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens, the continent of Africa is on the move, and the world cannot be left behind. So I must thank our President for making a continent's case for change in the UN Security Council's structure. In his remarks, President Bio spoke about Sierra Leone's role in peacekeeping operations around the world and the country's overarching desire to maintain peace and tranquility at home. Specifically, the President said, and I quote, Sierra Leone's active participation in peacekeeping operations demonstrates our firm commitment to the promotion and maintenance of international peace and security. Let me reiterate, the President said, this firm commitment to continue to contribute our fair share to maintaining world peace, end quote. As a member of the opposition party, I must comment that the President's assertions at the world body do not match his actions at home. Our President is a very divisive figure in the stewardship of his own country. How can he bring peace and cohesion to the world or trumpet a message of peace when he cannot maintain peace and harmony in his own country? It all sounds bizarre to me. President Bio's government is notorious for being ethnocentric and tribalistic in assigning roles and responsibilities to other citizens in the governance of their own country. The majority of persons in Sierra Leone's public service who do not hail from the President's tribe or ethnic group or region are prohibited from serving in his administration. How is this harmonious or cohesive? Continuing on the subject of Africa's inclusion in global security apparatus, the President urged world leaders to reform the United Nations Security Council as a matter of priority and urgency, because, according to him, reforms will address the long-standing injustice and imbalance in the present configuration of the UN Security Council. But Mr. President, before you call on the UN to address issues of injustice and imbalance, how about you start to address issues of injustice and imbalance in your own country and government? After all, charity begins at home. Only recently, your government engaged in a sustained campaign of violence, political intimidation, and exclusion of other political actors in Sierra Leone. There is more injustice and imbalance under your watch than any other time in our country's history. Fellow citizens, in continuing his address, the President spoke to the United Nations about the need to promote national dialogue and reconciliation. The President stated inter alia that, and I quote, Sierra Leone has pursued country-led peace and resilience through national dialogue and reconciliation. We recently concluded a broad-based national consultative conference, Bintumani 3, where a nationally representative body resolved to establish a permanent and independent national commission for peace and cohesion. We do so, the President said, mindful that peaceful coexistence and inclusive governance are prerequisites to our development. End quote. We in the All People's Congress remain troubled by the bona fides of the President's comments. His comments are simply devoid of veracity. The President is embellishing his record on cohesion and coexistence more than it actually is. The Bintumani 3 conference was not inclusive of the main opposition and largest political party in Sierra Leone, the All People's Congress, APC. Immediately preceding the so-called peace conference, this President's government unleashed security personnel to wreak havoc and mayhem in the headquarters of the All People's Congress Party. As the APC licked its wounds, the President hypocritically convened what looked like a peace conference, a facade at best, meritless and lacking of any meaningful theme geared toward peace and reconciliation. He himself, the chief architect of division and human rights abuses, spent less than an hour in a conference which lasted days and was convened by him. He was simply out of tune with his own creation. And he magically expects Sierra Leone to coalesce and unify as if it should happen by a mere stretch of his magic wand. During recent electoral canvassing, this President's government brought forth havoc and pandemonium at the headquarters of the All People's Congress Party, arresting and detaining several party executive members and stakeholders, among them Kalokoh Kaba, former mayor of Freetown, Herbert George Williams, and scores of other APC stalwarts. He had them detained for months under the most horrific prison conditions. In a prior display of executive judicial conspiracy, this President's government illegally removed 10 serving members of parliament belonging to the All People's Congress and unlawfully replaced them in parliament with members of his own party, even though the matters were appealed. The courts could not even entertain a motion for a temporary injunction or grant one sua sponte as judicial ethics would dictate, so as to allow sanity, political sanity to prevail. All of these factors are orchestrated by President Bio's government as a subterfuge for electoral malpractice and vote rigging, ably assisted by an overzealous National Electoral Commissioner who is quite receptive of political manipulation and gamesmanship. Elections recently held in Tonko Limba, Constituency 110, Falaba, Koya, and other places around the country are marred by unprecedented violence perpetrated by the President's party's stalwarts and operatives, ably supported by security forces under his control. The famous Arata, a Sierra Leone People's Party thug who perpetrated violence and horror on innocent civilians belonging to other political parties during the process, is not emblematic of a government that treats peace and cohesion seriously. On the issue of poverty reduction, the President told world leaders in his address, and I quote, "Development and priority eradication must be well planned, inclusive, and sustainable. It must transition our nation out of fragility." End quote. And I absolutely agree with the President. But this President's development agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is skewed. It is ill-informed and could hardly be described as inclusive in its outlook. The value of the Leone, our national currency, continues to plummet at an alarming rate. Desperate band-aid measures recently promulgated by Sierra Leone's central bank have not been able to arrest the depreciation. The requisite foundation for economic stability has not been put in place by a very naive, inexperienced, clueless, and poorly trained economic team. Again, this president's development agenda is either ethnocentric, tribal, or regional in nature. For example, in May this year, when the president laid out his development priorities before the House of Parliament, he proposed building an information and communications technology institution in his home district of Banff at the cost of $18 million United States dollars, leaving other regions around the country untouched by such a critical development tool. As if that is not enough, he proposed building an ultra-modern hospital in Kenema, eastern Sierra Leone, in his backyard and the hometown of his chief minister. He proposed renovating 4 secondary schools at the whopping cost of $45 million United States dollars, including his own alma mater, the Bow School, and Bunubu Teachers College, both in the southeastern region of Sierra Leone, shamelessly ignoring parochial and struggling schools in other parts of the country, especially the north and the northwestern regions. The president selected only the best schools, shockingly failing to lift those institutions and schools which needed the most help. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens, how can this be called national development? The best we can describe this is that it is parochial development, not national. The president told the United Nations that his government is, and I quote, open to partnerships, open to collaboration, open to ideas about how to continue improving the quality of life for the average Sierra Leonean, end quote. Fellow citizens, ladies and gentlemen, these statements are nothing but fluff and empty rhetoric. The evidence on the ground does not suggest that President Bio's government is open to collaboration and or cooperation from any faction that is not a part of his political party, his tribe, region, or ethnic establishment. His free education program is a colossal failure since its inception over a year ago. Just a few months ago, 90+% of Sierra Leone school children failed the West African University entrance examination in an abysmal manner under his watch. Needless to say that his free education program was poorly thought out since its initiation. Unlike what he promised to the people of Sierra Leone, children still go to school hungry. There are still not enough textbooks, desks, chairs, other learning materials, habitable school buildings. Teachers are perhaps more poorly paid and trained than ever before. Teacher training colleges are more moribund, dilapidated, and are not up to par with expectations. Fellow citizens, Sierra Leone's teacher training system is in a near state of collapse. School curricula has not been revised to reflect our core development priorities. Vocational and technical education has not taken off. And so the majority of our youths are still lacking in terms of modern technological skills. Talking about youths, in his address to the world body, the president said, and I quote, "The threat of inequality, lack of opportunity, and exclusion of our youth still persists. The anxiety over growing youth population in Africa is complicated by increased poverty indicators, youth exclusion, perilous migration across the Mediterranean, transnational organized crime, terrorism, and violent extremism, and greater regional and national security threats," end quote. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens, I subscribe to the president's views, but the degree of my subscription stops right here. President Bio told world leaders that his government is addressing youth issues through financial and social inclusion programs, skills training, and farming initiatives. Let us review the evidence thus far. Under his watch, Sierra Leone has witnessed the highest rate of youth unemployment in history. Under this president's watch, Sierra Leone youths have performed the worst in sub-regional public examinations in modern history. Under his watch, Sierra Leone has witnessed the most egregious violation of human and civic rights involving youths. More young people have been killed, maimed, drugged, sexually abused, illegally imprisoned, and brutalized under this regime than any other period in our country's history. And it's just been a year since the regime took over the reins of government. Our youths are still without basic technical and vocational skills, so they are not marketable around the world. Before talking about unfolding a global digital economy, this president must first start by looking at his own backyard. Show the young citizens of Sierra Leone, Mr. President, what a computer actually looks like before you can leapfrog to a conversation about global economic digitalization. Your citizens are not yet prepared for that. At least you have failed to lay the foundation for that to happen. On healthcare, President Bio told world leaders, and I quote, "Quality, affordable, and universal healthcare coverage is foundational to productivity and overall well-being." As a nation, the president said, we cannot afford the cost of not investing in healthcare and universal healthcare coverage. Fellow citizens, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot agree more with the president. Healthcare must be a development priority not only for Sierra Leone, but for Africa as a whole. But let us examine this president's healthcare achievements. His government has no credible healthcare plan for our country. Our infant mortality rate is still among the highest in the planet. Malaria, cholera, typhoid, onchocerciasis, HIV, and a host of other diseases are as rife as could be. Counterfeit medicines are still the order of the day under his watch. Our central hospitals are still among the worst performing in Africa. Our hospitals are eyesores, to say the least. Less than clean, unsanitized, ill-equipped, and manned by demoralized and poorly paid staff. The promised regional center of excellence has not taken off. More promises than pragmatism. Sierra Leone is yet to have what could be called a mental hospital or psychiatric institution, even though our country probably has the highest population of mental and psychiatric patients in the world as a percentage of national population. Press freedom. In his remarks, the president touched on press freedom. According to him, Sierra Leone continues to work with civil society and the press in order to expand democratic space. He claims, among other things, that his government has forwarded to Parliament a bill to completely repeal a 54-year-old law that criminalizes libel, which has been used by past governments to imprison journalists and restrict press freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens, this is incredible because this president has himself been using the same law to clamp down on press freedom and freedom of speech in his own country. Only recently, under this president's watch, a judge used the same law to imprison a journalist for criticizing that judge. And this president could care less about it. He neither commented nor took any action to change judicial attitude in that regard. Whilst I love and respect our judges, they are public officials and must be subject to public scrutiny. Like many other public officials, judges are custodians of the public's trust. So it is okay to criticize them. Of all people, judges should be the last set of public servants to invoke this outdated law in order to punish dissidents and opponents. But if I may ask, this president, Mr. President, where is your passionate outrage when this law was only a few weeks ago used to trample upon Mahmoud Tim Kabo, a journalist who committed the mortal sin of criticizing a judge? We did not hear you speak. You did not say anything. You did not take any action. You did not protect this journalist. You did not protect press freedom. You simply kept quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, citizens all, let me thank President Bio for continuing to champion the fight against corruption. I hope that statements like this one will catch his attention and will be treated with the good faith and bona fides it espouses. Our democracy is a fledgling one, I must confess, but with baby steps, we shall continue as the largest opposition to lend our voices to matters of national significance. And an address to the United Nations is one such matter of national significance. We love you, Mr. President. Long live the All People's Congress, and long live the Republic of Sierra Leone.